The sixth night. The dreams of the rich, and the dreams of the poor, they never overlap, do they? See, the poor dream all their lives of getting enough to eat and looking like the rich. And what do the rich dream of? Losing weight and looking like the poor. Every evening, the compound around Buckingham Tower's B block becomes an exercise ground. Plump, paunchy men and even plumper, paunchier women, with big circles of sweat below their arms, are doing their evening walking. See, with all these late-night parties, all that drinking and munching, the rich tend to get fat in Delhi. So they walk to lose weight. Now, where should a human being walk? In the outdoors by a river, inside a park, around a forest. However, displaying their usual genius for town planning, the rich of Delhi had built this part of Gurgaon with no parks, lawns, or playgrounds. It was just buildings, shopping malls, hotels, and more buildings. There was a pavement outside, but that was for the poor to live on. So if you wanted to do some walking, it had to be done around the concrete compound of your own building. Now, while they walked around the apartment block, the fatsos made their thin servants, most of them drivers, stand at various spots on that circle with bottles of mineral water and fresh towels in their hands. Each time they completed a circuit around the building, they stopped next to their man, grabbed the bottle, gulp, grabbed the towel, wipe, then it was off on round two. Vitiligo Lips was standing in one corner of the compound, with his bottle and his master's sweaty towel. Every few minutes, he turned to me with a twinkle in his eyes. His boss, the steel man, who was bald until 2 weeks ago, now sported a head of thick black hair, an expensive toupee job he had gone all the way to England for. This toupee was the main subject of discussion in the monkey circle these days. The other drivers had offered Vitiligo Lips 10 rupees to resort to the old tricks of braking unexpectedly, or taking the car full speed over a pothole, to knock over his master's toupee at least once. The secrets of their masters were spilled and dissected every evening by the monkey circle, though if any of them made the divorce a topic of discussion, he knew he would have to deal with me. On Mr. Ashok's privacy I allowed no one to infringe. I was standing just a few feet from Vitiligo Lips, with my master's bottle of mineral water in my hand and his sweat-stained towel on my shoulder. Mr. Ashok was about to complete his circle. I could smell his sweat coming toward me. This was round number 3 for him. He took the bottle, drained it, wiped his face with his towel, and draped it back on my shoulder. "I'm done, Balram. Bring the towel and bottle up, okay?" "Yes, sir," I said, and watched him go into the apartment block. He took a walk once or twice a week, but it clearly wasn't enough to counter his nights of debauchery. I saw a big, wet paunch pressing against his white t-shirt. How repulsive he was, these days. I signaled to Vitiligo Lips before going down to the parking lot. 10 minutes later, I smelled the steel man's sweat and heard footsteps. Vitiligo Lips had come down. I called him over to the Honda City. It was the only place in the world I felt fully safe anymore. "What is it, country mouse? Want another magazine?" "Not that. Something else." I got down on my haunches. I squatted by one of the tires of the city. I scraped the grooves of the tire with a fingernail. He squatted, too. I showed him the strand of golden hair. I kept it tied around my wrist, like a locket. He brought my wrist to his nose. He rubbed the strand between his fingers, sniffed it, and let my wrist down. "No problem." He winked. "I told you your master would get lonely. Don't talk about him." I seized his neck. He shook me off. "Are you crazy? You tried to choke me. I scraped the grooves of the tire again. How much will it cost? High class or low class? Virgin or non-virgin? All depends. I don't care. She just has to have golden hair like in the shampoo advertisements. Cheapest is 10, 12,000. That's too much. He won't pay more than 4,700. 6,500, country mouse. That's the minimum. White skin has to be respected. All right. When does he want it, country mouse? I'll tell you. It'll be soon. And another thing I want to know another thing. I put my face on the tire and breathed in the smell of the leather. For strength. How many ways are there for a driver to cheat his master? Mr. Giabao, I am aware that it is a common feature of those cellophane-wrapped business books to feature small sidebars. At this stage of the story, to relieve you of tedium, I would like to insert my own sidebar into the narrative of the modern entrepreneur's growth and development. How does the enterprising driver earn a little extra cash? 1. When his master is not around, he can siphon petrol from the car with a funnel. Then sell the petrol. 2. When his master orders him to make a repair to the car, he can go to a corrupt mechanic. The mechanic will inflate the price of the repair, and the driver will receive a cut. This is a list of a few entrepreneurial mechanics who help entrepreneurial drivers, lucky mechanics, in Lado Sarai, near the Kutub. RV repairs, in Greater Kailash Part 2. Nilofar mechanics, in DLF Phase 1, in Gurgaon. 3. He should study his master's habits, and then ask himself, is my master careless? If so, what are the ways in which I can benefit from his carelessness? For instance, if his master leaves empty English liquor bottles lying around in the car, he can sell the whiskey bottles to the bootleggers. Johnny Walker Black brings the best resale value. 4. As he gains in experience and confidence and is ready to try something riskier, he can turn his master's car into a freelance taxi. The stretch of the road from Gurgaon to Delhi is excellent for this. Lots of Romeos come to see their girlfriends who work in the call centers. Once the entrepreneurial driver is sure that his master is not going to notice the absence of the car and that none of his master's friends are likely to be on the road at this time, he can spend his free time cruising around, picking up and dropping off paying customers. At night I lay in my mosquito net, the light bulb on in my room, and watched the dark roaches crawling on top of the net, their antennae quivering and trembling, like bits of my own nerves, and I lay in bed, too agitated even to reach out and crush them. A cockroach flew down and landed right above my head. You should have asked them for money when they made you sign that thing. Enough money to sleep with 20 white-skinned girls. It flew away. Another landed on the same spot. 20, 100, 200, 300, 1,000, 10,000 golden-haired whores. And even that would still not have been enough. That would not start to be enough. Over the next 2 weeks, I did things I am still ashamed to admit. I cheated my employer. I siphoned his petrol. I took his car to a corrupt mechanic who billed him for work that was not necessary, and 3 times, while driving back to Buckingham B, I picked up a paying customer. The strangest thing was that each time I looked at the cash I had made by cheating him, instead of guilt, what did I feel? Rage. The more I stole from him, the more I realized how much he had stolen from me. To go back to the analogy I used when describing Indian politics to you earlier, I was growing a belly at last. Then one Sunday afternoon, when Mr. Ashok had said he wouldn't need me again that day, I gulped 2 big glasses of whiskey for courage, then went to the servants' dormitory. Vitiligo Lips was sitting beneath the poster of a film actress. Each time his master hammered an actress, he put her poster up on the wall playing cards with the other drivers. Well, you can say what you want, but I know that these jokers aren't going to win re-election. He looked up and saw me. Well, look who's here. It's the yoga guru, paying us a rare visit. Welcome, honored sir. They showed me their teeth. I showed them my teeth. We were discussing the elections, country mouse. You know, it's not like the darkness here. The elections aren't rigged. Are you going to vote this time? I summoned him with a finger. He shook his head. Later, country mouse, I'm having too much fun discussing the elections. I waved the brown envelope in the air. He put his cards down at once. I insisted that we walk down to the parking lot. He counted the money there, in the shadow of the Honda City. Good, country mouse. It's all here. And where is your master? Will you drive him there? I am my own master. He didn't get it for a minute. Then his jaw dropped. He rushed forward. He hugged me. Country mouse. He hugged me again. My man. He was from the darkness too, and you feel proud when you see one of your own kind showing some ambition in life. He drove me in the coolest, his master's coolest, to the hotel, explaining on the way that he ran an informal taxi service when the boss wasn't around. This hotel was in South Extension, Part 2, one of the best shopping areas in Delhi. Vitiligo Lips locked his coolest, smiled reassuringly, and walked with me up to the reception desk. A man in a white shirt and black bow tie was running his finger down the entries in a long ledger, leaving his finger on the book. He looked at me as Vitiligo Lips explained things into his ear. The manager shook his head. A golden-haired woman for him. He put his hands on the counter and leaned over so he could see me from the toes up. For him. Vitiligo Lips smiled. Look here, the rich of Delhi have had all the golden-haired women they want. Who knows what they'll want next? Green-haired women from the moon. Now it's going to be the working class that lines up for the white women. This fellow is the future of your business. I tell you, treat him well. The manager seemed uncertain for a moment. Then he slammed the ledger shut and showed me an open palm. Give me 500 rupees extra. He grinned. Working class surcharge. I don't have it. Give me 500 or forget it. I took out the last 300 rupees I had. He took the cash, straightened his tie, and then went up the stairs. Vitiligo Lips patted me on the shoulder and said, Good luck, country mouse, do it for all of us. I ran up the stairs. Room 114A. The manager was standing at the door, with his ear to it. He whispered, Anastasia. He knocked, then put his ear to the door again and said, Anastasia, are you in? He pushed the door open. A chandelier, a window, a green bed, and a girl with golden hair sitting on the bed. I sighed, because this one looked nothing like Kim Basinger. Not half as pretty. That was when it hit me in a way it never had before, how the rich always get the best things in life, and all that we get is their leftovers. The manager brought both his palms up to my face. He opened and closed them, and then did it again. 20 minutes. Then he made a knocking motion with his fist followed by a kicking motion with his shiny black boot. Get it? That's what would happen to me after 20 minutes. Yes. He slammed the door. The woman with the golden hair still wasn't looking at me. I had only summoned up the courage to sit down by her side when there was banging on the door outside. When you hear that it's over. Get it? The manager's voice. All right. I moved closer to the woman on the bed. She neither resisted nor encouraged. I touched a curl of her hair and pulled it gently to get her to turn her face toward me. She looked tired and worn out, and there were bruises around her eyes, as if someone had scratched her. She gave me a big smile. I knew it well. It was the smile a servant gives a master. What's your name? She asked in Hindi. This one too. They must have a Hindi language school for girls in this country, Ukraine, I swear. Munna. She smiled. That's not a real name. It just means boy. That's right. But it's my name, I said. My family gave me no other name. She began laughing, a high-pitched, silvery laugh that made her whole golden head of hair bob up and down. My heart beat like a horse's. Her perfume went straight to my brain. You know, when I was young, I was given a name in my language that just meant girl. My family did the same thing to me. Wow, I said, curling my legs up on the bed. We talked. She told me she hated the mosquitoes in this hotel and the manager, and I nodded. We talked for a while like this, and then she said, "You're not a bad-looking fellow and you're quite sweet," and then ran her finger through my hair. At this point, I jumped out of the bed. I said, "Why are you here, sister? If you want to leave this hotel, why don't you? Don't worry about the manager. I'm here to protect you. I am your own brother, Bolram Halwai." Sure, I said that in the Hindi film they'll make of my life. 7,000 sweet rupees for 20 minutes. Time to get started. That was what I actually said. I climbed on top of her and held her arms behind her head with one hand. Time to dip my beak in her. I let the other hand run through her golden curls. And then I shrieked. I could not have shrieked louder if you had shown me a lizard. What happened, Munna? She asked. I jumped off the bed and slapped her. My, these foreigners can yell when they want to. Immediately, as if the manager had been there all the time, his ear to the door, grinning, the door burst open, and he came in. "This," I shouted at him, pulling the girl by her hair, "is not real gold. The roots were black. It was all a dye job." He shrugged. "What do you expect, for 7,000? The real thing costs 40, 50. I leapt at him, caught his chin in my hand, and rammed it against the door. "I want my money back." The woman let out a scream from behind me. I turned around. That was the mistake I made. I should have finished off that manager right there and then. 10 minutes later, with a scratched and bruised face, I came tumbling out the front door. It slammed behind me. Vitiligo lips hadn't waited. I had to take a bus back home. I was rubbing my head the whole time. 7,000 rupees, I wanted to cry. Do you know how many water buffaloes you could have bought for that much money? I could feel Granny's fingers wringing my ears. Back in Buckingham Towers at last, after a 1-hour traffic jam on the road, I washed the wound on my head in the common sink, and then spat a dozen times. To hell with everything, I scratched my groin. I needed that. I slouched toward my room, kicked open the door, and froze. Someone was inside the mosquito net. I saw a silhouette in the lotus position. "Don't worry, Bolram. I know what you were doing. A man's voice. Well, at least it wasn't Granny. That was my first thought. Mr. Ashok lifted up a corner of the net and looked at me, a sly grin on his face. I know exactly what you were doing. Sir. I was calling your name and you weren't responding. So I came down to see. But I know exactly what you were doing. That other driver, the man with pink lips, he told me. My heart pounded. I looked down at the ground. He said you were at the temple, offering prayers for my health. Yes, sir, I said, with sweat pouring down my face in relief. That's right, sir. Come inside the net, he said softly. I went in and sat next to him inside the mosquito net. He was looking at the roaches walking above us. You live in such a hole, Bolram. I never knew. I'm sorry. It's all right, sir. I'm used to it. I'll give you some money, Bolram. You go into some better housing tomorrow, okay? He caught my hand and turned it over. Bolram, what are all these red marks on your palm? Have you been pinching yourself? No, sir, it's a skin disease. I've got it here too, behind my ear. See all those pink spots? He came close, filling my nostrils with his perfume. Bending my ear with a finger, gently, he looked. My. I never noticed. I sit behind you every day and I never. A lot of people have this disease, sir. A lot of poor people. Really? I haven't noticed. Can you get it treated? No, sir. The diseases of the poor can never get treated. My father had TB and it killed him. It's the 21st century, Bolram. Anything can be treated. You go to the hospital and get it treated. Send me the bill, I'll pay it. Thank you, sir, I said. Sir, do you want me to take you somewhere in the city? He opened his lips and then closed them without making any noise. He did this a couple of times, and then he said, my way of living is all wrong, Bolram. I know it, but I don't have the courage to change it. I just don't have the balls. Don't think so much about it, sir. And sir, let's go upstairs, I beg you. This is not a place for a man of quality like yourself. I let people exploit me, Bolram. I've never done what I've wanted, my whole life. His head sagged, his whole body looked tired and worn. You should eat something, sir, I said. You look tired. He smiled a big, trusting baby's smile. You're always thinking of me, Bolram. Yes, I want to eat. But I don't want to go to another hotel, Bolram. I'm sick of hotels. Take me to the kind of place you go to eat, Bolram. Sir. I'm sick of the food I eat, Bolram. I'm sick of the life I lead. We rich people, we've lost our way, Bolram. I want to be a simple man like you, Bolram. Yes, sir. We walked outside, and I led him across the road and into a tea shop. Order for us, Bolram. Order the commoner's food. I ordered okra, cauliflower, radish, spinach, and dal. Enough to feed a whole family, or one rich man. He ate and burped and ate some more. This food is fantastic. And just 25 rupees. You people eat so well. When he was done, I ordered him a lassi, and when he took the first sip, he smiled. I like eating your kind of food. I smiled and thought, I like eating your kind of food too. The divorce papers will come through soon. That's what the lawyer said. All right. Should we start looking already? For another lawyer? No. For another girl? It's too early, Mukesh. It's been just 3 months since she left. I had driven Mr. Ashok to the train station. The mongoose had come to town again, from Nunbot. Now I was driving both of them back to the apartment. All right. Take your time. But you must remarry. If you stay a divorced man, people won't respect you. They won't respect us. It's the way our society works. Listen to me. Last time you didn't listen, when you married a girl from outside our caste, our religion, you even refused to take dowry from her parents. This time, we'll pick the girl. I heard nothing. I could tell that Mr. Ashok was clenching his teeth. I can see you're getting worked up, the mongoose said. We'll talk about it later. For now, take this. He handed his brother a red bag that he had brought with him from Nunbot. Mr. Ashok clicked open the bag and peered inside, and at once the mongoose slammed the bag shut. Are you crazy? Don't open that here in the car. It's for Mukshan. The fat man. The assistant. You know him, don't you? Yes, I know him. Mr. Ashok shrugged. Didn't we already pay those bastards off? The minister wants more. It's election time. Every time there's elections, we hand out cash. Usually to both sides, but this time the government is going to win for sure. The opposition is in a total mess. So we just have to pay off the government, which is good for us. I'll come with you the first time, but it's a lot of money, and you may have to go a second and third time too. And then there are a couple of bureaucrats we have to grease. Get it? It seems like this is all I get to do in Delhi. Take money out of banks and bribe people. Is this what I came back to India for? Don't be sarcastic. And remember, ask for the bag back each time. It's a good bag, Italian made. No need to give them any additional gifts. Understand? Oh, hell. Not another fucking traffic jam. Bolram, play Sting again. It's the best music for a traffic jam. This driver knows who Sting is. Sure, he knows it's my favorite CD. Show us the Sting CD, Bolram. See, he knows Sting. I put the CD into the player. 10 minutes passed, and the cars had not moved an inch. I replaced Sting with Enya. I replaced Enya with Eminem. Vendors came to the car with baskets of oranges, or strawberries in plastic cases, or newspapers, or novels in English. The beggars were on the attack too. One beggar was carrying another on his shoulders and going from car to car. The fellow on his shoulders had no legs below his knees. They went together from car to car, the fellow without the legs moaning and groaning and the other fellow tapping or scratching on the windows of the car. Without thinking much about it, I cracked open the egg. Rolling down the glass, I held out a rupee. The fellow with the deformed legs took it and saluted me. I rolled the window up and resealed the egg. The talking in the back seat stopped at once. Who the hell told you to do that? Sorry, sir, I said. Why the hell did you give that beggar a rupee? What cheek. Turn the music off. They really gave it to me that evening. Though their talk was normally in a mix of Hindi and English, the two brothers began speaking in chaste Hindi entirely for my benefit. Don't we give money each time we go to the temple? The elder thug said. We donate every year to the Cancer Institute. I buy that card that the school children come around selling. The other day I was speaking to our accountant and he was saying, Sir, you have no money in your bank. It's all gone. Do you know how high the taxes are in this country? The younger thug said, if we gave any money, what would we have to eat? That was when it struck me that there really was no difference between the two of them. They were both their father's seed. For the rest of the drive home, the mongoose pointedly kept his eyes on the rearview mirror. He looked as if he had smelled something funny. When we reached Buckingham B, he said, Come upstairs, Bolram. Yes, sir. We stood side by side in the elevator. When he opened the door of the apartment, he pointed to the floor. Make yourself comfortable. I squatted below the photo of Cuddles and Puddles and put my hands between my knees. He sat down on a chair, and rested his face in his palm, and just stared at me. His brow was furrowed. I could see a thought forming in his mind. He got up from his chair, walked over to where I was crouched, and got down on one knee. He sniffed the air. Your breath smells of aniseed. Yes, sir. People chew that to hide the alcohol on their breath. Have you been drinking? No, sir. My caste, we're teetotalers. He kept sniffing, coming closer all the time. I took in a big breath, held it in the pit of my belly, then I forced it out, in a belch, right to his face. That's disgusting, Bolram, he said with a look of horror. He stood up and took 2 steps back. Sorry, sir. Get out. I came out sweating. The next day, I drove him and Mr. Ashok to some minister's or bureaucrat's house in New Delhi. They went the red bag. Afterwards, I took them to a hotel, where they had lunch. I gave the hotel staff instructions, no potatoes in the food, then drove the mongoose to the railway station. I put up with his usual threats and warnings, no A/C, no music, no wasting fuel, blah blah blah. I stood on the platform and watched as he ate his snack. When the train left, I danced around the platform and clapped my hands. 2 homeless urchins were watching me, and they laughed. They clapped their hands too. One of them began singing a song from the latest Hindi film, and we danced together on the platform. Next morning, I was in the apartment, and Mr. Ashok was fiddling with the red bag and getting ready to leave, when the phone began to ring. I said, I'll take the bag down, sir. I'll wait in the car. He hesitated, then held the bag out in my direction. I'll join you in a minute. I closed the door of the apartment. I walked to the elevator, and waited, and waited. It was a heavy bag, and I had to shift it about in my palm. The elevator had reached the 4th floor. I turned and looked at the view from the balcony of the 13th floor. The lights were shining from Gurgaon's malls, even in broad daylight. A new mall had opened in the past week. Another one was under construction. The city was growing. The elevator was coming up fast. It was about to reach the 11th floor. I turned and ran. Kicking the door of the fire escape open, hurrying down 2 flights of dark stairs, I clicked the red bag open. All at once, the entire stairwell filled up with dazzling light, the kind that only money can give out. 25 minutes later, when Mr. Ashok came down, punching the buttons on his cell phone, he found the red bag waiting for him on his seat. I held up a shining silver disc as he closed the door. Shall I play Sting for you, sir? As we drove, I tried hard not to look at the red bag. It was torture for me, just like when Pinky Madam used to sit in short skirts. At a red light, I looked at the rearview mirror. I saw my thick mustache and my jaw. I touched the mirror. The angle of the image changed. Now I saw long, beautiful eyebrows curving on either side of powerful, furrowed brow muscles. Black eyes were shining below those tensed muscles. The eyes of a cat watching its prey. Go on, just look at the red bag, Balram. That's not stealing, is it? I shook my head. And even if you were to steal it, Balram, it wouldn't be stealing. How so? I looked at the creature in the mirror. See, Mr. Ashok is giving money to all these politicians in Delhi so that they will excuse him from the tax he has to pay. And who owns that tax, in the end? Who but the ordinary people of this country? You. What is it, Balram? Did you say something? I tapped the mirror. My mustache rose into view again, and the eyes disappeared, and it was only my own face staring at me now. This fellow in front of me is driving rashly, sir. I was just grumbling. Keep your cool, Balram. You're a good driver, don't let the bad ones get to you. The city knew my secret. One morning, the president's house was covered in smog and blotted out from the road. It seemed as though there were no government in Delhi that day. And the dense pollution that was hiding the Prime Minister and all his ministers and bureaucrats said to me, "They won't see a thing you do. I'll make sure of that." I drove past the red wall of Parliament House. A guard with a gun was watching me from a lookout post on the red wall. He put his gun down the moment he saw me. Why would I stop you? I'd do the same, if I could. At night a woman walked with a cellophane bag. My headlights shone into the bag and turned the cellophane transparent. I saw 4 large dark fruits inside the bag, and each dark fruit said, "You've already done it. In your heart you've already taken it." Then the headlights passed, the cellophane turned opaque, the 4 dark fruits vanished. Even the road, the smooth, polished road of Delhi that is the finest in all of India, knew my secret. One day at a traffic signal, the driver of the car next to me lowered the window and spat out. He had been chewing pan, and a vivid red puddle of expectorate splashed on the hot midday road and festered there like a living thing, spreading and sizzling. A second later, he spat again, and now there was a second puddle on the road. I stared at the 2 puddles of red, spreading spit, and then the left-hand puddle of spit seemed to say, but the right-hand puddle of spit seemed to say, "Your father wanted you to be an honest man. Your father wanted you to be a man. Mr. Ashok does not hit you or spit on you, like people did to your father. Mr. Ashok made you take the blame when his wife killed that child on the road. Mr. Ashok pays you well, 1,000 rupees a month. He has been raising your salary without your even asking. This is a pittance. You live in a city. What do you save? Nothing. Remember what the buffalo did to his servant's family. Mr. Ashok will ask his father to do the same to your family once you the very fact that Mr. Ashok threatens your family makes your blood boil." I turned my face away from the red puddles. I looked at the red bag sitting in the center of my rearview mirror, like the exposed heart of the Honda City.